Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharvan Raghavan.
Sudeep, we've been seeing a lot of brands from the time we were kids, even before we got into marketing. And everybody's got money, everybody's investing money behind advertising. But there are some brands you remember and some brands you don't. And there are sometimes you remember the ads of the brand, but you struggle to recall the brand. Why does this happen? What's wrong or what's working for some brands and what's not working for other brands?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Corporates, marketers, since ages have been trying to figure out an answer to that one. What you're trying to do is pose that question and get an answer in a very, very easy and simple format from me. So let me first
That
start by saying there is no simple answer to this.
But isn't that the whole point of this podcast to get simple answers from you?
That is what we try and do on the podcast. So let's try and do that. From a memorability point of view, there are brands that have become integral part of our routine lives,
Hmm.
yeah, which you tend to use on a daily basis, and you might therefore tend to remember them for all the usage experiences that you have with them.
Right.
Yeah,
The functional familiarity you
the
build with them.
functional familiarity. So maybe the milk additive that you grew up with, the toothpaste that you always used since you were a child, etc., etc. So there is some sort of a familiarity that you have.
Right.
I'm keeping those aside,
Okay.
and then there is whole host of brands that are neither essential nor have they been an integral part of your life for a long period of time, yet you tend to remember a lot of them. Why do those brands stand where they stand? Brand is a set of promises that a product or a service makes to the consumer, and then fulfills that promises over and over again. It is as much about making the promise as much it is about fulfilling it.
Right.
And there is something about making the promise in a manner which becomes memorable for a lot of brands, and that's where I think our today's topic lies, which is around storytelling.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Brand storytelling.
brand storytelling. All of us have grown up listening to a lot of stories. Whenever our parents, our teachers wanted to impart any kind of education to us, a lot of it got imparted in the form of stories. You can also see a lot of examples. So for example, history is a story,
Exactly.
but it is so poorly told in most textbooks that people only see it as an assortment of dates and wars and rulers and
Ah,
temples, etc., etc. Yeah.
very true. Very true.
Otherwise, if you present it as a bouquet of stories, there is just so much to learn and extract out of them.
Right.
Yeah, almost every civilization, every war, every action that happened in history, there is significant lessons to learn. But our method of storytelling renders those subjects completely useless.
Absolutely. The
Yeah,
story itself could be so interesting and so full of drama, but the way it is told can just take the joy out of it. You're right.
correct. Now compare it with moral sciences. Now people will say, we've never studied moral sciences in our childhood.
Hmm.
Yeah, what you don't realize that you have, and you have grown up with it. Yeah, because all of us would have gone through stories like Mahabharat,
Hmm.
Ramayana, Panchatantra. Yeah, all of these are nothing but moral science lessons wrapped inside extremely engaging stories.
True.
And not only are the stories engaging, but the characters are also so vivid and interesting that each one of them has their own story to it.
Right.
Yeah. Or you come to say, when we get into our colleges, especially in our post graduation, the sort of learning that we get from case studies
Hmm.
is immense. Now what is a case study? Case study is a story.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, a lot of those case studies are still recalled by people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And that's because they've been expressed so beautifully in the form of a story. And
Hmm.
hence my case that if you want your brand to be remembered, you have to tell an good compelling story for it,
Hmm.
so that people remember it beyond the usage.
Right. So you're saying there are brands that stick in your head because you've used them regularly,
Yeah.
and there are, I mean, I'm not talking about brands that become services. So Xerox, people in India believe is a service and not a brand.
Yeah.
So I think, keeping them aside, there are some brands, even if you've not interacted with them very closely or used those products, those brands still stick in your head.
Yes.
And the core element of that is about storytelling and the stories that these brands tell that stick with you.
Correct.
Let me go deeper. How do you tell a good story for a brand? Because moral
Mm.
science seems easy because you got values, you talk about the values, you're done. How does a brand tell a story?
No,
Where does it
actually,
start?
moral science is not so easy, Sharon. And let's discuss some of the elements of storytelling and constructing a story. And then we can go back and revisit
Okay,
how beautifully are those moral science stories crafted.
cool.
Yeah. So I think the first tenet of making your brand memorable is to try and find a role for it in consumers' life.
Okay,
Right now, when we say a role, not all roles are literal or physical. Many roles could be metaphorical or figurative also.
you need to go deeper on that for me.
Okay, every brand will do something for the consumers that they are otherwise not able to do or feel without that brand. Yeah, for
Hmm.
example,
Hmm.
let's talk about Mentos.
Right.
I'm deliberately picking up a very cursory 1 rupee category that ideally nobody would assign any role to.
Hmm.
Now, when Mentos product team or brand team would have set out on their journey to find the most compelling story for it, they would have met a lot of teenagers and tried to find out what is it that they are looking for,
Hmm.
and they must have found this space which says that they are able to, because these guys are short on resources, but they have this urgent need to impress other people of the same age, especially people from the other sex.
Hmm.
And one of the things that is at their disposal all the time is the quick wit, quick thinking on their feet, etc., etc. So they must have found this space that people with quick thinking, people who are smart, are always appreciated by people around them,
Right.
right? And a lot of the time, this quick wittedness, this smartness, lands in the gray area.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the purists might say that these guys are bending the rules, or they are uh, going towards the wrong side. But these teens wanted somebody to approve this kind of a thinking, approve this kind of quick thinking, and give legitimacy to it.
Right.
And hence, if you look back and you look at Mentos teacher ad,
Hmm.
where there is this boy who is entering into the class and he's late, and the teacher says, "कहाँ जा रहे हो? बाहर निकल जाओ." Right? And in the other case, the guy enters by turning towards the door, and while he's entering the class, as the teacher looks at him, he kind of appears as if he's running out of the class, and he fools the teacher, and the teacher believes that the guy is trying to run away, and he says, "Sit down." Right now, and then they deliberately show a female who is sitting on the front bench, looking
Who's
at the guy
impressed?
and smiling at her. She's
Right.
impressed. Yeah. So now all of this has multiple learning for anybody who wants to talk about or learn about storytelling.
Hmm.
But for now, the primary lesson that we are talking about is that finding the role in consumer's life. So
Hmm.
recognizing that the consumer wants to impress people from the other sex, and what they have at their disposal is their quick wit.
Hmm.
The tension, the problem is that when they are fooling the teacher, a lot of the people will not like that a student has fooled the teacher.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Or take the other example. Do you remember the ad for Mentos watermelon flavor?
Not really. What is it
The-
about?
okay, so there's this long sort of a traffic jam, and a boy is riding a bike, and he figures out the traffic jam is there because there is a police checkpoint ahead, and they're checking for helmets.
Ah, I remember this. Yes.
Yeah, so now this guy doesn't have a helmet. So then he sees a vendor, watermelon vendor on the side, goes to the watermelon vendor and buys a watermelon, cuts it into the shape of a helmet, and you see him wearing a helmet and going past the puzzled policeman.
Right.
Yeah, similar thing, quick-wittedness,
Hmm.
taking on the authorities, fooling the authorities. So a lot of the elder guys will not like this, that you're fooling the authorities, you're taking the law into your hands, etc., etc. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, a teenage wants legitimacy.
Hmm.
That here is a brand that condones me for doing this, that praises me for doing this, and stands up for me,
Right.
right? So therefore, finding that role in consumer's life is very important. Yeah.
Right.
And and therefore, while it may sound very simple, the question will be, how do you find out that role in consumer's life?
Exactly. In fact, even getting there, I have a question.
Huh.
Say, have you read this book, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller?
No, I am not much of a reader.
So I've read the book. I'm not the greatest fan of the book. It's pretty popular because I think it templatizes what you're saying a little too strongly. But one point I took away from the book was that the protagonist of the story you want to tell is not you, is not the brand. It is
Mm-hmm.
always the customer or the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get that. I like that point also. My question is, I have made something, right? And I'm going to sell it to the consumer. Now, I've got to be talking about what I have made for them, right? How does the story enable that if I'm going to be a supporting actor in the story or supporting role in the story? How does that work?
Hmm. Okay, I like that point actually, because what we started by saying was that you have to figure out a role in consumer's life.
The protagonist is always the consumer.
Yeah, and you are playing a role. You remember the Share the Load campaign?
Yes, Ariel.
Ariel, any detergent can honestly pick that space up.
Right,
There's nothing specific in Ariel that enables it to pick that space.
right.
Is It's a consumer story
Hmm.
where Ariel is playing a role to bring about a particular emotion that might be felt in different ways by the female of the house and the man of the house.
Hmm.
So you are playing the role in consumer's life.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting back on track,
Yeah.
how do you find attention and how do you resolve attention in the consumer's life, as you mentioned?
Yeah. In fact, when you talk about playing a role in consumer's life, one of the things that people might have in their heads is that there are thousands and lakhs of brands.
Hmm.
How can all of them play a role in consumer's life?
Exactly.
Right. Now, usually what I tell people is that uh, there are only a set of emotions that the consumers want to feel.
Hmm.
You want to be happy slash joyous, hopeful, right? They want to feel loved, they want to feel respected. So each one of these are emotional buckets that the consumers want to feel,
Right.
and so therefore there are only handful of them. And finally, at the end of the day, all the brands are either helping take care of consumers fears or helping them feel all these positive emotions.
Got it.
Yeah, so don't worry about each brand crafting a different role in consumers' life.
Okay.
There'll be lots of overlapping roles.
Hmm.
Yeah, as long as you think that there is a strong connection between you as a brand and the role that you are proposing to play, you should be okay. Don't worry if it is overlapping with somebody else.
So differentiation
Yeah,
is not the driver for the story.
I would say uh, the differentiation of emotion that you deliver might not be the driver,
Hmm.
but your story has to be different.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, if tomorrow uh, a product like, I don't know, a mint candy
Hmm.
tells the exact same story as Mentos, it won't work,
Right.
right? But if somebody wants to tell the story of a quick-witted kid, that can work,
Right.
right? And there have been multiple attempts. There is Parle G Mane Genius.
Hmm.
Now that's also something in that sphere, younger kids though,
Right.
right? And there are umpteen stories about teenagers becoming quick-witted and doing stuff, etc., etc., right?
Mm-hmm.
Khulke bol,
Yeah.
etc. So therefore, all of them are trying to do the same thing, but are adopting different ways of approaching it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So therefore, to the questions you asked, how do we figure out a role in consumers' life?
Hmm.
Yeah. And the first step to do that is to figure out a tension in consumers' life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What is a tension? Tension is when a consumer wants to do or feel something,
Hmm.
but has some barrier or has some inhibition. Yeah.
Okay.
A tension always has a but,
Okay.
a desire and a but.
I want to do this, but I can't do this because of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, all insurance ads
Hmm.
will talk about the fact that I want to enjoy my life, but I'm worried about the future when I'm gone.
Right.
What will happen to my family when I'm gone? So, therefore, you will have them talking about this space about either one way to say geo befikar, take an insurance and then live freely, enjoy, etc., etc. Or they will take the other route. They will show ki, array, you've gone and you've not saved anything, and now your family is suffering, etc.
Hmm.
Don't let this happen to your family.
Right.
Both are talking about the same space but have adopted a different route.
Yeah. In fact, it's even the same message. It's just that they've taken different tonal approaches to it. Right.
Correct. So the story is approached differently.
Hmm.
The space is the same.
Right.
Right? So therefore, this tension is very critical to establish. And because we started this podcast by saying story, the importance of storytelling, this is where you figure out a tension by asking the consumers to tell their stories to you. You ask them what is your tension, they will obviously not be able to articulate it,
Right.
but you have to be able to give them a platform where they tell you the story, usually within your immersions or any kind of interaction that you're doing with them, and then you use that story to identify the tension. You have to put two and two together.
Right.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the work that we were doing on gems,
Hmm.
when we were trying to figure out uh, the tension in elder kids life.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And this is the work that we were doing around colors and gems and all of that. And therefore, one of the tensions that we were trying to resolve was that there are a lot of things that the kids like when they are younger,
Hmm.
and they carry forward with them as they grow ahead,
Got it.
but they have to give up some of them because many of those things are termed childish
Hmm.
by their peers and friends, etc., etc. So that's a tension that they had,
Right.
and we were trying to resolve that tension by telling them that a lot of the things needn't be dependent on the age, they can be umorless, and hence came raho umorless.
Thank you for listening to CoB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharvana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBCAST.net.
I know you're a great storyteller. You've spoken about the tension and how a brand can build a story by relieving the tension in the consumer's life. But I want to break it down further. So,
Okay.
what are the elements that make up a story, and how does the brand fill in these blanks to tell a cohesive story?
Okay. Now the fact is that you understand that identification of tension is what we spoke about,
Right,
and identification of tension requires the consumer to tell the story. So that's established.
right.
So once you've figured that out, you would also want to then resolve that tension,
Mm-hmm,
right? And you resolve that tension by telling a story again to the consumer. Now you're telling consumer their story
mm-hmm.
that they told to you while they were revealing their tension,
Okay.
and this story now has a resolution of the tension.
So you take their story, put yourself into the story, and tell the story back to them.
Yeah, by resolving the tension.
Sounds a little too simple. I'm going to push you to break it down further.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So, you know, any story will try and have first a context.
Hmm.
Yeah, what is the, where is the protagonist, what are they doing, what is the
The setting
context,
of the
etc.,
story.
etc. Yeah,
Okay.
then you will have some kind of a setup for the tension.
Hmm.
Yeah, where the tension gets revealed. Some of them will be intuitively, will be able to identify the tension intuitively.
Mm-hmm.
For some of them you have to spell it out.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then follow it up by resolution of the tension. Yeah,
Okay.
in very simplistic terms. So let's just think about it. You've seen these ads for Harpik by Aman Verma.
Of course.
Yeah, a lot of us might find them irritating, but they're very effective, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, so there is this setup where you will see Aman Verma traveling across the country
Hmm.
trying to talk to housewives.
Right.
Yeah, and he's trying to make them believe in something. Then there is setup for the tension where he enters the toilet and he says, "आप इसको कैसे साफ करती हैं?" She says that I use acid or whatever detergent, etc., etc.
Bleach was the
And
latest campaign, I think.
yeah, sorry.
So when we were in Harpic, the whole point was to get users of bleach, acid, and phenyl to move to Harpic. So
Correct,
every ad had different versions of this saying, I'm better than bleach, I'm better than detergent, I'm better than acid, I'm better than phenyl. So it depends on the cut
correct,
you saw and
correct,
which time of the year you were watching it. You'd see a different version of it.
correct, correct. But so this must have been the tension that the brand was trying to resolve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the tension exactly was that everybody wants their bathroom to look sparkling clean
Hmm.
and free of germs, etc., etc.
Got it.
Yeah, but this is the resource that they had at their disposal,
Right.
and you had to, and the but also can say, but my mother, my maid have been cleaning it this way, and that's the only way I know.
Right.
Now you have to break this.
Hmm.
So therefore enters Aman Verma, who enters the toilet and shows her Harpic, which can clean the toilet very very well, right? And
Right.
it shows toilet half and half and stuff like that.
Got it.
So there is the setup, the context, the setup of the tension, and the resolution of the tension. And the resolution is shown in the manner of the housewife or the lady of the house first being surprised and then being happy, where she snatches the pack of Harpic from Aman Verma's hand and then says that, okay, now I will use this to get the bathroom that I want.
Right. But for a functional product, the before after makes perfect sense. So there, the tension and the resolution is very apparent.
Let's talk about 5 star.
Hmm. Perfect.
Yeah, now 5 star has some functional benefit,
Hmm.
that it has a engaging caramel chewy eat that kind of draws attention to itself,
Hmm.
and for a brief moment in time you tend to lose yourselves in it,
Hmm.
right? Same is for eclairs also. When you're eating an eclairs,
Right.
it draws your attention towards it,
Hmm.
right? So therefore you will find that they've been able to again, tell their story with similar structures in being visible. You will find, for example, this whole situation of losing yourself within being romanticized
Hmm.
over and over again in five star.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Even from the Ramesh Suresh,
Previously,
it's the same.
yeah, it was legitimized by humor in Ramesh Suresh,
Hmm.
right? The repeatedly ek bilang ek bilang
Right.
resulted into trouser becoming really short,
Hmm.
and then has now become into a little more, in that zone to say, eat five star, do nothing.
Hmm.
And now we are romanticizing doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah, all of this emerges from the core idea that five star draws attention to the eat experience and therefore forces you to do nothing, even if it is for a little while.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
their latest campaign, I don't know whether people have seen it, would have just released, where they show a boy walking in a library, picking up books to see what skills can they pick up for future.
Hmm.
So he starts with coding, for example, and then there is this news anchor that says that in the near future AI will do all the coding that you
Right.
need. And then he picks up some book about, some composing music. It says AI will now start composing music, and he goes through that series, and finally says that let me pick up one future-proof skill,
Hmm.
which is doing nothing. Yeah, if I learn to do nothing very well, I will be able to use AI to do everything for me.
Right.
Yeah. So again, there is the context: boy in the library trying to pick up books, etc., etc., set up for the tension
Hmm.
that, everything that the boy wants to do is something that the AI can take up,
Right.
and then the resolution that actually you don't need to do anything.
Right.
Doing nothing in itself is a lot.
Got it.
And here is the brand which legitimizes doing nothing,
Hmm.
but partly aids also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, the story structure you will find similar, whether it's a functional brand or a non-functional brand. The story structure will not vary.
Right. That's a perfect example, Sudeep. So makes a lot of sense. We've understood the context, the setting up of the tension, and the resolution of the tension. Now, these are elements that you can use in telling your brand story. But what, how can I make this compelling? I've got the context, I've got the tension, and I'm resolving it. Now, is there a structure for me to make this communication compelling?
Hmm. I don't know whether there exists a structure,
Okay.
but there are a few observations that I might have,
Hmm.
um, of common elements that I've seen across a lot of compelling stories.
Okay.
Yeah, and it comes from all sorts of stories, not just advertising, but films,
Hmm.
moral science stories like we spoke about, etc., etc. All of them are rooted in authenticity. They will all resolve tensions that have been articulated directly or indirectly by the consumers.
Hmm.
So they are resolving a real tension.
Right. Relatability.
Relatability. A lot of the, so while Mahabharat and Ramayana are set up in different yug
Hmm.
and with people who had different sort of aura and stature, etc.,
Hmm.
the issues that they were resolving were very, very relatable.
Hmm.
So if Mahabharat had an element of brothers fighting with each other, that happens in every household.
Right.
Yeah. So the problems that they resolved are very simple problems,
Right.
but getting resolved by people who had extraordinary resources and powers at their end. But finally, they were resolving very human problems.
Right.
Yeah, same thing in Ramayana.
Yep.
Yeah, so it starts with jealousy, and the whole episode starts.
Yeah.
So therefore, you will find that all of them will be rooted in authenticity all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and hence when a product manager is and a brand manager is thinking through this, the first task there is to meet consumers, get them to tell you their stories, identify multiple authentic tensions out of which your brand can resolve one.
Got it. Okay.
Second part of a compelling story usually is creating memorability by putting in elements, exaggerated elements in characters or situations.
Hmm.
Now, this is where I love Mahabharata and Ramayana example.
Okay.
The characters have been made so involving,
Hmm.
and they've been given such vivid characteristics that you remember them for who they are, and that has been done to contrast the sort of situations that they face,
Hmm.
and you will remember them.
Right.
Yeah. So that's about
So
memorability. Yeah.
exaggeration increases memorability.
It is either the characters or the situation.
Hmm.
Then the third piece, now you've identified a authentic and a rooted story.
Hmm.
You've constructed it in a manner such that the character or the situation is memorable.
Right.
Now you will therefore do a setup
Hmm.
for the tension, and then you will resolve the tension.
Right.
Yeah. So now resolution of the tension has to be worthy of that setup.
Hmm.
Yeah, of course you have done a exaggerated setup, so therefore you might as well resolve it properly. And that resolution, more often than not, should leave the consumer with some kind of positivity,
Hmm.
with some kind of hope. Yeah.
Right.
The relatability and the resolution creates hope that ये मैं भी कर सकता हूँ.
Got it.
Right? You see a situation where somebody uses extraordinary amount of money to buy their way through all problems. A lot of the people in India will not be able to uh, derive hope out of that resolution.
Right.
They will see it on cinema, they will get entertained by it,
Hmm.
but it is not something that they are going to maybe resolve, maybe see resolving their own problems with.
Got it.
Right? That's why you will see that in India, at least I see a lot of the I've always been fascinated on whenever there is a some kind of a villain versus hero situation in India. I see a lot more fight with hands and legs and versus weapons.
Right. Even
Yeah,
in Uri, when you go to attack Pakistan, it's still hand to hand
correct.
combat is what kind of gets the masses going.
Correct, because that's what they can still see themselves doing.
Hmm.
As soon as a weapon enters the scene, it already has reached a level where it is not relatable to me. I like watching it.
That's a fantastic
Yeah.
point. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
So I'm always fascinated. In Hollywood movies, I see a lot of weapons.
Hmm.
Yeah, possibly people in US carry a lot of weapons also with them. So, the and they've had that cowboy genre, etc., etc., where everybody had a gun up their holster.
Right.
India has been very different. We've grown out from kushti, so therefore hand-to-hand combat is what works for us. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Justified a
so
lot of
therefore
bad storytelling in the movies, but yeah, that's a sad aside.
yeah, so I think therefore the resolution that provides hope is something that works for people.
Got it.
Yeah, another element that you can possibly work upon, and as a compound of all these three, which is rooted in authenticity, treated in a memorable manner by investing into characters or situations, and then providing excellent resolution, you then hope you know to pack it in a manner such that you over index on at least one or two emotions.
Hmm.
Yeah, you will always find that either it is heightened on humor,
Hmm.
things are made extremely funny, or it really tugs at your heart, makes you feel for something. There are only two or three emotions that you know
Yeah.
people like to feel. So therefore one of those has to be triggered really really well. If you are able to do all these three four things, there are good chances that you will create a memorable or a compelling story which will be remembered by people.
Hmm.
And what I found, Sharon, is that the most memorable ones then make it into a consumer lexicon.
Hmm. Right.
Right? Because they've just got the combination right. Now For a fair amount of time, Ramesh Suresh
Yeah.
or Ek Bilang Choti Kar Do had entered consumers' lexicon.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people had started using it. Fevicol has entered consumer lexicon.
Yeah.
Yeah, चुटकी में चिपकाए और दाग अच्छे हैं और क्या चल रहा है फॉग चल रहा है.
Hmm.
All of these are very smart executions that that have found that sweet spot of identifying the real tension, resolving that tension in a memorable manner such that the consumer remembers it and attributes it to the brand also.
Right.
That's the holy grail all of us are looking at.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it does not happen just by following the formula. Otherwise, every execution for Perfetti, for Pidilite, for Asian Paints would have been a hit.
Hmm.
It is not.
Right.
So therefore, obviously, it requires magic also to comes through. Only logic can't take you to glory all the time.
Right.
So the logic and it's the same team, yeah.
Yeah.
So the same sort of same quality of brand managers, product managers, marketing team, the same quality of agency.
Hmm.
Somebody like Mr. Piyush Pandey being involved, etc. Yet sometimes the magic doesn't happen.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there is the role of magic, which I don't want to take away from storytelling. But there are some observations that I have from a logic point of view, which, if taken care of, can possibly, you know, give you some basic level of success that a brand might need.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is a very, very useful episode because one, it's filled with a lot of examples. So from all the feedback we're getting, I understand episodes with examples get people to understand it better. And the other way, I liked how you broke it up, saying there is a way to build your brand story, and you need to basically put the consumer at the center of it. And I liked how with the bit of plagiarism you advocated, taking the consumer story and inserting your brand into their life and then giving them the resolution. So therefore you have the situation, you have the tension, then you have the resolution of the tension. And it just sounds so simple, these three steps. And when done with authenticity, with a little bit of exaggeration to exaggerate the tension, to exaggerate the situation, and providing a resolution where your brand stands out without killing the humor or the narrative of the story, is what can make your brand memorable, especially if you can trigger emotions, give hope. And if you continue to do this with intent, there is a greater chance for you to become part of the consumer lexicon or the pop culture, where consumers start talking more about your brand than even you are. And all of this comes with a bit of caveat that this is the logic of building the brand story, but there is a significant element of magic that has to happen. And the only way of doing it is by doing more of it.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sudeep.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharvana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBcast.net.